Hi. I'm hoping you all can hear me and see me. This is like the first time I've done a live. I didn't do a ton of. Here, I'm gonna check my Facebook. Okay, let me know. Shoot me a note in this video. This is like very, very meta. So just shoot me a little bit of a note in the comment section to let me know if you can hear me, because I have my headphones on. Actually, let me switch around. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, there I am. So let me know if you can see me and if you can hear me. Obviously, I was just checking out on the video, and it looks like everything's live streaming. So if you could just shoot me a comment and let me know that this is working, that'd be awesome. Yay! Okay, we have a like, which is excellent. So that means you can see me. Hopefully you can hear me as well. Ooh. So let me know. So I'm really excited actually to talk about this. It's not something that I do a ton. But as most of you know, I'm Lauren Caselli. I'm working on being a little more transparent about what it's like to run a business. I run an events business. If you don't know, we work with clients all over the West Coast and some on the East Coast as well, and we travel quite often to work with our clients. But some of the time, people, okay, Rachel, yeah, you can see. Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm so glad. Let me know if the sound gets funky. Just because I've got, apparently it's like snow plowing out in the back there, so it might get a little loud. But so we work with clients all over the country, and we are projecting some serious growth this year. So last year, just a quick behind the scenes or kind of a back end of this, in 2018, like end of summer, fall, I hired a bookkeeper for the first time. Not because I can't do my own books. I love doing my own books. I really like to know where we're spending, but I wanted more reporting. I wanted someone to basically tell me what money I had to spend, because that wasn't information that I knew how to do myself. So I could like look at what I had in my bank account, but it just wasn't translating to like what's coming in, what's going out, that kind of stuff. So it took us about a year to get everything sort of like well, it didn't take her a year to get everything. It took her about a couple months to get everything moved over into a new system. And then it took us about a year of regular monthly meetings for her to sort of go through what came in, what's going out, are we hitting our numbers, are we not hitting our numbers, and doing that every month for about a full year before I really understood what our good months were, what our not so good months were, some problems I was having with cash flow, and I thought I would share with you sort of what it looked like on the back end. So just for clarity's sake, I will show you my real numbers, but not in this public webinar. I'm going to show you some dummy numbers that I put in, but if you're curious about my real numbers, I'm happy to share them with you if you want to do like a private coaching call or something like that. But the process is the same. And I also put in all of my like projected expenses, and these are based on my actual expenses from 2019. So the data from 2019, actually, let me just make sure that's true. The data from 2019 that I'll show you today is accurate, not so much as far as income, but for the most part, expenses and salaries and things like that. So that's correct. And then same with 2020. And I have not same, the expense projections are the same, and they're actually my real projections. But it's not what actually, the income is not actually what's projected, but I'm going to walk you through sort of like how I do this spreadsheet. And the way that I got this spreadsheet is actually, it's just a download from QuickBooks. My accountant downloaded it and kind of formatted it a little bit, or I'm sorry, my bookkeeper downloaded and formatted it. And then we sort of, she like put in the expenses, and then we sat down. It took us like 3 hours, but we sat down and kind of went through all of my contracts, put all of my contract information that was coming in for the year, and then sort of looked at the gaps, kind of where I was, like from a gap perspective. So I'm going to try to walk you through how I do this, how we went through and did this at the beginning of the year in January. And then I'm going to kind of hopefully give you some takeaways about, sort of some next steps. If you're like curious about your year and you have data from previous years, this will help you create sort of just a better, more secure idea about when you can spend money, when you can't spend money, when you'll have the money, when you won't have the money, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to switch over to the non-video of my face, and we can look not at Facebook. Nope, don't want that. We want this. There it is. Okay. So, a few things. I'm going to walk you through 2019 first. This is the data. Again, these are the top part. I should actually highlight them for you. So all of these are not real numbers. These are just kind of dummy numbers I put in so that you had an idea of like what actually came in. And then these are actually, I think, most of my real expenses. I'm not 100% sure actually on this, but yeah, these are for the most part real expenses. Actually, no, it looks like some of these are projections, not actually real expenses. But anyway, so the first step for you, if you're like, gosh, I really would love to know sort of what my cash flow is. Well, actually, before we go in there, why is cash flow important? Cash flow really is important because one of the things that kills a business faster than you can, and inhibits growth, not only kills it, but inhibits growth, is cash flow. On a big scale, often there are large companies who basically they say, we pay for 75% of our product or our services up front so that they have the cash flow to operate their business. But sometimes what happens is, for example, their client doesn't pay them, they're 30 days late, they're 60 days late, whatever. And it's really important to know, can you afford for a client to be 60 days late in their payment? Can you afford for a client to say, hey, I can't pay you for 3 months because of cash flow on our side? And that's why cash flow is important, because if you don't have cash, you can't pay yourself, you can't pay your team members, you can't pay, you can't do anything, you can't buy any services. So you're sort of just stuck. And if you do that for too often, if your cash flow and you don't have anything in your bank account to make money, your business will fold. And so this is why it's really important as you grow your business, as you're sort of getting into the place where you're having more recurring monthly income and sort of on the growth trajectory, why it's really important to know these numbers. And again, this is something, if you're curious about doing this, having me come in and do this for you, I can do it. We could work together and do something like this. Sometimes the money piece of business is mostly emotional. Okay, cool. So I'm going to walk through 2019 and then we're going to walk through 2020. I'm going to show you how I did everything for both of those and then why it's important. Okay. So if you are wanting to do this for yourself, or you really want to know sort of how you can get started with like really understanding your numbers, the first step I would recommend is to either pull your bank statements or pull your, if you have QuickBooks or QuickBooks Self-Employed, is pull all of that information from 2019, spend a full Saturday. You can like have fun with it, make like a, fun breakfast. And essentially I would just put together sort of a 2019 last year business budget. What are the things that, happened in 2019. And again, one of the things I wanted to mention, be accurate, not precise. So if you have like a $30 check that you're like, I don't know what that is, just put it in like meals or something. It doesn't really matter. $30 one way or the other isn't going to make or break this, but it's really important that you at least get into the habit or at least spend a couple hours doing this. I will say, like, this is sometimes more emotional than it is like the actual physical piece of it. So give yourself some time, give yourself a whole day, go to a coffee shop, invite me, I will help you. But it's really important. So your first step is to go through and look at when all of your money came in 2019. So these aren't real, but some of them are close. So like, for example, I launched a course. So I have 4 main ways that I make revenue in the business, and that is course income. I have 2 courses and I'm launching a 3rd on retreats at the end of the spring. I have reimbursement expenses. Now this is stuff that I spend, but I get reimbursed for. It's not really, it sort of cancels itself out on the line item on my kind of like business balance sheet, but it's important because, like, for example, I had to buy a bunch of plane tickets in August, or actually kind of throughout the summer, and I didn't get reimbursed until August for those plane tickets. And so it was really important that I knew that I had enough cash on hand to cover that cost, so that I could not, so I could make payroll and all that fun stuff. So I have some reimbursed expenses. If you have reimbursed expenses, I would say over $100 a month, this would be a good revenue category to put in. Services, that's the main way I make money. And then speaking, and then some boss lady events. So again, these are all revenue numbers. None of this is profit. None of this is like minus. This is just what came into my bank account. So if you can spend this Saturday just doing your revenue numbers and break it down by your product offerings, maybe it's, if you're a wedding planner, maybe it's like weddings and facilitation and part-time work, whatever it is, just make sure you put your categories here and then, go through and see when the money actually came into your account. And like, for example, course income, I sold some passive courses last year, January. So that was $500. I think this also includes some coaching. So I did a little bit of coaching. I'm going to put that in there. I did. And it looks like I might've sold one course and then done like a 2 coaching session or something like that. So anyway, so I went through and put all these numbers in, and some of these are actually dummy numbers. And then you'll see, okay, April, and then also November, I did launches last year. And so I don't actually think the April one is correct, but this is like a dummy number. I think this is just to see sort of like, November is a really big and busy month for me because I launch and then I have some projects coming in. So note to self for 2020, November is a big month. Don't plan anything really big for November if we're going to do a course launch again or whatever. So that's the income side. As there are questions, I'm not looking at the Facebook, so feel free to just throw questions in there and I can answer them at the end, but I'm not looking at the Facebook comments, so you're just going to have to bear with me. Okay, so reimbursed expenses, this is definitely not correct, but, for example, okay, I had a bunch of reimbursed expenses in August of last year, and I also had a bunch of reimbursed expenses in October of last year, and so the total was about $7,000, and so just to know that, like, even though I say I make, X amount of dollars in revenue I think we were close to like $250,000 in revenue last year, but 7,000 of that is like stuff that people pay me back, and so it's like revenue that we spend, but it's like not really actually my money. Services, it's our biggest service provider. And again, this is really helpful because I can see, oh man, February, March, April, May are big months for me, that Q1, and then we totally die in the summer. And then it picks up slightly back in the fall, but early part of the year is ready. So energetically, I have to be ready for those, those incomes. This is actually not correct. This is just like some stuff I put in. But, just something to consider when I'm looking at my full year. Okay, October is really busy. We get a lot of cash that comes in. And then toward the end of the year, we have a little bit, but it's not a ton. And then lastly, speaking events. So I had spoken last year and they paid me out. I had spoken twice actually. And I also had a Boss Lady event. So I spoke and it was a $2,500 speaking fee. And then the Boss Lady event was $2,000. So that was March. We had a little bit extra cash flow from some of those things. Not a ton in the summer. I think I spoke again potentially in the fall. And so those were it's a little bit of speaking revenue, which is great. And then at the bottom, this is like our monthly cash flow. So it looks like April was the biggest month for us because of services and also because of a launch. But we have a couple other big months, October, November, March, and February. So those are kind of our big times. And so that's, and that's actually thinking about it consistent with my business. So now I know that like, no matter what happens based on 2019, I can probably project into 2020 when I do my projections that those are going to be busy months, just depending on when client project works. So I can already think like, okay, a good time to take a vacation looks like June or July because we don't have a ton coming in then, or a personal vacation. So it's not as busy, August, September, October, November, busy. December, a little bit less busy. So this also sort of helps me decide like, when am I going to take breaks during the year? When am I going to, maybe it's like, and we'll see this in 2020. I did a dummy number here that shows a negative cash flow. So that you could see, okay, like I know because I have this negative cash flow that I gotta, I gotta do like, $5,000 worth of coaching, that month or whatever. But this is kind of just, it helps you make a vision and project a vision out into like your next year. So that's the income. So the next step is to take all of your expenses, as many as you can, and to put them into sort of these categories. These are like pre-dummied categories that QuickBooks creates. So I'm not the person, I didn't do any of this. So I don't do any Facebook I didn't do any Facebook advertising last year, or maybe I did, but it is not in here, but I did very little Facebook advertising last year. Bank charges are both fees. And then also I got hit with a bunch of overdraft fees because we were figuring out our bookkeeping. So not a proud number. I mean, this isn't all overdraft fees, but I know that one is. So I think most of these are real. Some of them are estimates. I can't remember because I didn't look super closely at it. But So bank charges, so that's, something to know, like, oh crap, like I could save $3,500 by like being more efficient with my bank fee, or not taking payment via credit card. Like, it's something to consider. Contractors, contract labor that we worked with last year. Business insurance, I have a big payment of business insurance in January, and that affects my cash flow, so I got to be aware of that. This is my health insurance for the year from last year. Legal and professional, this is basically like my accountant. That's why March is so much. It's like $1 bajillion because of March. We pay, taxes and whatnot. And then it's kind of a consistent sort of bookkeeping and accounting fees every month. Meals and entertainment, these were estimates. I don't know why it was 207, but maybe we just took the sort of like what it was in January and then projected for the rest of the year. Memberships, these are, I think this is Planoly maybe. This is like a software. I'm not 100% sure, but office equipment, less than 2,500, which include, I guess I didn't have any. I think I bought some in the beginning of the year last year, but maybe I got categorized differently. And then software subscriptions. This is sort of like all of my software. So like I pay for my email provider and I pay for a bunch of other stuff. And then again, this is accurate, not precise. Like other business expenses, I have no idea what that was. It was probably just like some stuff that we like couldn't quite figure out what it was going to be. And so we were just like, okay, well, miscellaneous, it's other. And that's totally fine. Professional development, I didn't have a line item for professional development, but I did go to a conference in June. So probably it's the reimbursable expenses for travel is where that business conference, because I paid for it in 2018. So the travel must be for the professional development, the conference that I went to in June. So that's travel for professional development. Here's some meals that I went, on events for. And then if you'll notice, these sort of correspond to this reimbursable expenses, because these are all expenses that I was paid for by my clients. And so if we're taking it out of sort of like what we were spending, we have to put it into the income because it did eventually get reimbursed up there. Okay, next. So these are all reimbursable expenses, and we don't have to do a ton of looking at that. I just want to highlight them in green so that we know that this is like technically comes out up here. So we don't have to worry a ton about it. Rent or lease. So I had an office space last year. And so this is all, projected throughout the year. And what it was, I obviously had a deposit come in. And so we got rid of the office space and now it's just, that'll be zero, coming back in 2020. Utilities in the office space, it looks like it fluctuated because of the heat and air conditioning and stuff. And then salaries and wages is actually really important because when you get to a point where you're bringing in more than $50,000 to $60,000 worth of income, or revenue, your accountant might encourage you to set up an S Corp, which is what my business structure is. And the S Corp essentially treats you as an employee. You're an employee of the company, and then you actually get like a paycheck. So I get a paycheck, and these were the wages that I paid out last year. So state income tax, you also have to think about that, state income tax and federal, and then additional withdrawals that I made, which is taxed at a different rate than my salaries and wages are taxed. So this is not what I paid myself. This is what I paid my employees. So I had a teammate, many of you know, and so that was not just me. And then owner's withdrawals. These I think are projections about what I thought that I could take last year. And so in a real 2019 budget, you'd want to put your withdrawals / your salary, like what you actually took out, so that you knew what you were paying yourself. And also did you pay yourself consistently throughout the year, or did you take $10,000 in one, in April and nothing until August? And so it's important to know sort of when you're paying yourself, as well. Over here, the totals, I don't really do a ton of that, but sometimes it's nice to see the total because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending $5,000 on this. Is there a way I can cut that down a little bit? And then same thing over here. Wow, it's a big expense. Also, this is sometimes profit margin. Expenses are 96. wow, revenue's only 122. So, what's that percentage? Do I want to widen that percentage, and how do I want to do it? So if that's all you do, I think that will give you a really good picture into 2020. Again, going back through, seeing when your checks came in, looking at your bank accounts, or even just looking at your contracts with your past clients from 2019, just going through and putting it into the budget. Or putting it into your 2019 past expenses, and then going through and seeing if you can capture as much of your receipts from 2019 as possible. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to get every single receipt. But if you just go through your credit cards and your bank statements, it'll take you a couple hours. I will support you through it. You can send me an email and I'll support you through it. But it'll give you a really good picture about what's going on in your business so that you can make plans for 2020. Okay. I'm going to take a talking break while I move over to 2020 and then also to 2021. This says year 3, but I'm going to change that to 2021. Oops. Because essentially, because I have contracts that start now and then sort of float into the end of the next year, it's important for me to know kind of when the money comes in. Some of our contracts don't end until beginning of next year. Anyway. Okay, so 2020. So the first thing that I do is I go through and I look at my 2019 receipts. I do it backwards. So I go through and I look at my 2019 receipts and I put in basically an average of what was spent every month from 2019. So for example, bank charges, $34.63. I would basically just take that number and I would put an average in here. I don't know if I actually did that, but this is only $1,500. So basically I told myself, I was very kind to myself, and I basically said, I want to take less bank charges. So the only fees that I'm going to pay is $125 of credit card fees every month. And I'm going to really try to cut this number down, because there's no reason that I need to be paying bank fees. Most of my clients pay in check or ACH transfer. So I'm really going to try and cut that number down. Same thing with contractors. So contractors' fees went up a little bit, and that's just because I know that I have a couple events coming up where I'm going to need some assistance. And so basically I was like, okay, so I have a February event that's going to need some assistance, and a March event that's going to need some assistance, and an April event that's going to need some assistance, or that's when I'm going to pay it out. Because the event that I have in March is at the end of the month. And so I'll probably pay out a deposit, and then I'll pay out kind of after the event's over. And so that is split up because I think that's for one event. Same thing, June, I have an event that I'll need some help with, and then I'll pay, July, I have an event that I'll need some help with, and so I'll pay out on either sides of those months. And then same thing, December, I'll have an event that I'm looking for some help with. So those are projections. Also, I'm noticing, okay, last year was only 5,000. Does that make sense? Do I need to up it? Do I need to lower it? But, so definitely good to look at. Business insurance, I only pay it once a year, and it's pretty easy to sort of see. So I basically just put it in the one time a year that I pay it. Last year, I think it was $1,500. It goes up a little bit every year. So who knows? We'll see. Hopefully it's not a disaster, but that'll go in. Health insurance, I changed health insurance plans, so it went down a little bit. Last year was $400 a month. This year about $350, so that's a little bit of a savings. Legal and professional, I do, obviously tax season, I'm trying to buffer a little bit, give myself a little bit of a cash cushion for tax season, because that is usually a little more expensive than I want it to be. Same thing here for personal taxes, this is business taxes, personal taxes. And then sort of trying to get it down from this. I actually switched softwares, so it was $400 a month before. So the software that I'm paying right now is actually going down here in the software subscriptions, and so I took. I'm using my account less for payroll and just using the software for payroll. And so that'll hopefully decrease my contractor costs a little, or my legal and professional costs a little bit from $5,000 down to $3,800. Hopefully, that's the goal. Who knows? Meals and entertainment, I don't do a ton like I used to, but I'm just giving myself, this is just a normal budget of $150 a month. Last year, I think my budget was a little bit higher. I don't know why it's $207, but I decided, okay, how much am I traveling this year? How much am I taking people out to lunch and stuff like that? And again, this can go up or down just based on the cash flow stuff, but we'll talk about that here in a second. And then on down the line, memberships, I'm a member to a online service. Office supplies, these are all of my software subscriptions for email and whatnot. Some of those I pay in bulk. You'll see here, I do a bulk payment. I also do a bulk payment this time of year, a bulk payment this time of year. So these are just good things to know. I pay $588. I don't know what software that's for, but I pay that in bulk in April. So I got to make sure that I have good cash flow that month. And then this year I want to do some professional development. There's a couple conferences and retreats that I want to go to. And most of those, because they take place at the second half of the year, most of those want you to pay them beginning of the year. So that's why I've sort of put in these like bigger, large numbers so that I can just have the cash flow on hand to be like, okay, if I want to spend 10 grand, I'm going to spend 10 grand. You know, if I don't spend that much money this month, then I can parse it out over the next couple months. But usually if I'm going to take any retreats or professional developments or anything like that, that's going to occur at this time of year, but I'm going to pay for it at the beginning of the year. I do have a line item for miscellaneous. I don't have anything projected in there, but I always can if I decide to do something else, like, who knows, travel. These are all my reimbursable expenses. So this is just sort of like, okay, I know that in March, I'm going to get reimbursed about $100 from a small event that I'm doing mid-February. And then I'm going to have some meal reimbursements for an event in March as well. And then probably some supply and material reimbursements as well. And then lastly, rent or lease. I gave up the office space, so I don't have to pay rent at all this year, so far. And then, you know, supplies and materials. This is just like an estimated budget, like, you know, ink for the printer and whatnot. For the year, travel, I don't have a projection on the travel, but I do know that I did have to spend some money on travel, in January. And so this is actually a line item, a budget. I'm actually going to highlight this that I should go in and flush out, because I haven't looked at that yet. And then utilities, I pay my phone and my Wi-Fi that goes in through my business, and then salaries and wages, again, paying for staff time. So that's what I do. I do the expenses first because I've already done the expenses from last year. And so it's easy to sort of just like make projections, because you don't have to like go through any contracts or anything for the expenses. So that's what I do first. The second thing that I do, actually I should mention this. So these are other categories that I don't have because I don't own a building, but loan principal payment, let's say I took out a loan for the business, and I had to pay it back every month. That would go in here. And that accrues. It's just a different, it like accrues interest. And so that's why it's down here. Capital purchases, same if I wanted to, you know, about a computer or something like that, or a building for the office space. That sort of goes in here because those depreciate. And so I need to make sure that, actually I'm not 100% sure about that, but talk to your tax accountant. I don't really know, but that's what a capital purchase is. It's basically like a car or a laptop or anything that depreciates in value or appreciates in value. Income taxes. So, you know, just for cash flow purposes, we put the income tax in here when I pay. These are my quarterly taxes for the year, roughly. And then my owner's withdrawal. Currently, I'm not projecting an owner's withdrawal, but I do that last after I do all my contract work. So then I can go in and say, oh, like we have a lot of cash flow this month. Maybe I'll take a $2,000 distribution this month and then see how that changes sort of what's going on. Same this month. Maybe I'll take a $2,000 distribution. Oh, I might be able to even take a $4,000 distribution that month. So this sort of helps understand like my personal, like what I'm personally taking out of the business. And then also kind of what we're holding in the business, so that it can be reinvested in staff or growth or Facebook ads or whatever. Okay, so that's the expense side. How are we doing? I'm actually, well, I feel like I've been talking for a lot of the time. Let me go back up to this. I'll walk you through kind of the income piece and how I project that. And then I will go to questions and switch to my face, because I feel like I've just been talking at you nonstop for the last 30 minutes. Okay. So, okay. A couple things. We'll talk about cash on hand here in a second. I'm going to highlight it so that you can see it a little bit differently here. Okay, so we're not going to talk about cash on hand right away. Basically, this is the fun part. This is the money-making part. So what I would recommend, once you've done sort of your projections on how much you think you're going to be spending and what months you're going to be spending it in. Then what I want you to do is take any signed contracts that you have, or any kind of verbal contracts that you're pretty sure that you're going to get, and basically look through those contracts and add them into your cash flow. So for example, January is almost over, but I know that I got a payment from a on-site event that I spent some time working on, and that was this amount of money. So that's an extra true amount. And then I also sold a couple courses and some coaching calls. And so the course income, course income. Oh no, coaching's down here. I don't know. Right, currently in January, these are real income numbers because what ended up happening is I don't actually know I actually had put these in because these are actually coaching calls that I have booked. So, and also there's a product. It looks like there's a product sale here. Okay. What am I doing? Oh, jeez. How do I change that? Escape. Sorry. There it is. Sorry. Okay. So course income, I don't have any reimbursable expenses that I'm getting reimbursed for this month. So good to know that's not coming in yet. And then services, this is what I kind of came in at. And then, speaking coaching, I don't have any speaking coaching income that came in this month, even though these are technically like coaching calls, but whatever. It's just in the wrong category. I think if we were to make it real, then it would be this. And then, oops. There, and then here. There. So now we can actually see the breakdown. It doesn't really matter, it's the same end goal, but just now we can see like the breakdown and how much I'm spending on each. The other thing to notice is cash on hand. This currently says it's $20,000, but basically that is just like the end of 2019's cash that is down here, and then put up here, so that I know sort of like, here's what you're coming into the year with, and then this is what it would look like going forward. And again, these are dummy numbers. These aren't actually real numbers, but I wanted to start off the year, and then I did some fun things in April so that you can sort of see like what you do with this information as you're projecting. Okay, so those are real numbers for January, except for this is not a real number. But then going forward, basically what I do is I say, okay, I made $197 in course income, but I really want to start selling more courses. And so if I'm going to my goal was to make about $15,000 in course income this year. That means I have to sell about $1,500 a month, which means I have to be launching or creating a funnel or something, but I really have to work on this, over the next few months, and sell those courses. So, that's kind of what I have going on here. Excuse me. So that's my projection. If that feels like hard and scary, like it's totally not important to do, you can say, okay, I'm going to skip this month. I'm going to skip this month. I'm going to skip this month and this month and this month. And this is what it looks like if it changes. This is what it looks like for my cash flow, really tight that month. Really tight that, not too bad this month. Oh, I'm below the line this month. Like, what does that look like? So, just really important to kind of like have a realistic projection. And these are all guesses. Like I'm just guessing, like I'm like, in April, I want to sell, $1,500 in course income. So I should do sort of a sale, like on my course. So, anyway, so that's how that comes in. Reimbursable expenses. Again, this is just when I'm going to a conference that I'm planning. I know I have a February event, so I'll probably get reimbursed for that stuff in March. And I also have a March event, and I won't have a ton of expenses, but I know I'll get reimbursed for it in April. May, I have an event, that I have to buy a plane ticket for. And so I'll usually purchase that in May, but they're really fast on the turnover. So I'll probably get reimbursed in the same month. Same with June. I'll probably get reimbursed for any expenses for my June event after the June event. And they're pretty fast. And then July, same thing. I have to book a bunch of plane tickets and stuff. So I'll probably get reimbursed pretty quickly after that event as well. So that's what the reimbursable expenses are. It's just so that I can understand cash flow. Excuse me. And then, again, we'll talk about this number here in a second. But when you have a red on your spreadsheet, then you can kind of do something with it. Services. Okay, so for services, if you are a service provider, take all of your contracts, figure out when your clients are going to be paying you, and then put it into these buckets. So again, these are dummy numbers. I just made them up. But let's say you know that you have a client who's going to pay you, like it's due, their payment is due. You have 2 payments of $2,500 from 2 different clients. Whoops, sorry, don't know how to do math. There. You know they're coming in May, you put those in May. And that's like right now, I don't have any invoices due in July. So that's a big bad zero. And I got to look at that. Like, does that mess up my cash flow? Like, what does that look like for me? So that is the reason. So you just take your contracts that you have with your clients and you put when their due dates are, the invoice due dates are, which months they're in. And then you can kind of see like what's coming in for the full year. And then also if you only have clients booked through June, then you know, okay, I got to like work on getting some clients for the last half of the year because this is the only amount of income that we have coming in. And if I don't do that, then I'm not going to be able to grow the business. And then lastly, speaking and coaching. These, again, I don't do a ton of speaking and coaching is new for me, right? And so I had a goal to make about $15,000 in coaching income this year. And so if I'm going to do that, I've already sold 500, so I've only have 14,500 left. So if I'm going to do that, I got to really consider how I'm going to do that, whether it's through a group program or doing more one-on-ones or booking clients kind of 3 months at a time. I am thinking about launching my Make More Money 2020 course. Group program. It's going to be 5 people. It's going to be a lower price point than it was in the fall, a slightly lower price point. But that way, essentially we'll do this. The first exercise will be, we'll actually put together your cash flow projections and then we'll map out your year so that you can accomplish those things. But anyway, so that'll be launching in February. And then I am going to launch another group coaching program in April. And then depending on how it goes, depending on if I'm getting more one-on-ones or the group coaching is going well, hoping to do some group stuff and some individual coaching 4 more times this year. So that's the goal. That's how it's going to be achieved. And we're hoping for the best. But again, these are all projections. Some of these numbers, the services are booked income. So I know that those are possible. And also I'm like, well, I only have $80,000. Oh, odd. It's like the same amount over here, but I only have $80,000 booked. But we, maybe our real numbers were like 120, like I'm $40,000 down. Do I need to book another client in this part of the year so that I can bump those numbers up a little bit more? Okay. The last thing I wanted to point out is cash on hand and cash flow. So the formula for this is essentially just like this money down at the bottom. It's basically like what cash on hand was, subtract all of the expenses. So minus this, and then minus this, and then that's the cash on hand. And then it repeats up at the top. Again, here's what's coming in, here's what's going out. Okay. Then that's the cash on hand. That goes up here. Here's what's coming in. Here's what's going out. So it's like this plus this minus all of this. And it's important because, I did this dummy number where in March we have a ton of expenses coming up and the income that I've projected, it's not actually real, but the income that I'm projecting is not enough to cover sort of what's going out for March. And so then I got to look at my budget and say, okay, I have this big payment, can that go out, in April instead of March? What, maybe I'm not going to pay it at all, or I'm going to not do professional development in that way or decrease the budget. What does it look like if I have to pay it out in April instead? Okay, slightly better. So maybe, I'll see if I, can, change the payment plans for those or whatever, however it works. And then we're back up in the black. So, that's, and, even February and March have a really low cushion. So how can we, bump up those cushions? Maybe instead of, if I do 1,500, I can probably do 2,000. That gives us a little more runway. And are there any clients that I can book right now to get their deposits earlier than later in the year so I can have more of a cushion in February? So those are all the things this is why I do this. This is why it's important. I'm going to leave the last 15 minutes for questions. Hopefully you're still with me. If you're not, totally fine. I'm switching back to my face. I would be curious to know if this was helpful. If you have if you're basically this was a total fire drill junk show. I would love to know what questions you have and how I can sort of help you with this. And I'm going to go over and see if there's any questions. Hold on. How do I do this? Expand. Hang on. Okay. Let me see. Okay, let me know if you have questions. If you don't have questions, that's totally fine. But what I really want you to do is I really want you to go through this exercise, either pull it from QuickBooks or I'm happy to send you a template. I'd be super curious to know what is exciting about this to you, if you're interested in doing it, going forward. And if I can help you with it, if this is something that you're like, I really want to do this, I really want to have this as a part of my business, but I feel overwhelmed and I don't know where to start and I don't know how to like, pull all this information, that's totally fine. Like, you just need to get some help. And I'm happy to help you if you are needing help with it. So if there aren't any questions, that's totally fine. I would recommend you're always welcome to email me or tag me in the video below if you're watching the replay of this. Just tag me in the video below. I will reach out to you or answer the question as much as I can. And if you have any feedback about how this could be better, if you were like, I really would have loved to see XYZ, how do you do it, all that stuff, let me know. That'd be great. There's a question. Yay. Do you have your accountant? Hold on. It says it had to broadcast. Oh, cool. That's so fun. Do you have your accountant pull all the expense and income in your QuickBooks, or do you do the data entry? So I spent 3 hours with my accountant doing it with her, because emotionally it's really challenging for me to go through all of this stuff. But to be honest, I can pay her hourly to do it without me, and probably would have gone faster. My accountant is like very good at what she does. And so, she goes a lot faster than I do, but, I'm trying to think. For 2019, I put all my expenses in for 2019. That's not true. She did all the expenses for 2019, but when we did the projections for 2020, she sort of went through and said, like, let's look at 2019. Okay, she like guided me through the projection piece of it for 2020. But 2019, I have QuickBooks, not QuickBooks Self-Employed. I have like the full QuickBooks, which I think is like $60 a month. It's a little bit more expensive. But for $60 a month, now I can pull the full report. And then this is actually what I just showed you is actually from QuickBooks. So QuickBooks like pulls that report already. So if you went into your QuickBooks and if you have the formal version, you literally can go to their reporting function and it will pull you that. I think it's called a balance sheet. I'm not sure. But I think it's called a balance sheet, and it's the full year balance sheet 2019. I'm not 100% sure about what it's called, but probably their help function could help you. But yeah, you could just pull all that information and you wouldn't actually have, as long as it's all categorized, you actually wouldn't have to enter all of this. You could just pull it from QuickBooks. This is a good question. Do you have monthly expense income reports? So the format is, you don't have to do it, but I meet with my bookkeeper every month and she pulls it. So she reconciles my expenses, she categorizes them. And then what we do is we meet every month and we basically like do this same process, except just for the month. We say, okay, we projected that we were going to spend $120 on bank fees. Did we do that? Yes. Or no, we spent less or we spent more. You're on video. Oh. I feel like I'm that kid who's like walked into his parent like being on the Today Show or whatever when he was in like Korea. Anyway, so we go through our monthly expenses every month and make sure that everything is lining up. So like last year I had projected that I was going to do, I think, a $20,000 launch last April, and I think I only did half of that. And so in that month it was like, she basically was like, you only did half. Like, is that what you want to do? Are you good with that? This is what it looks like now that we're through this. Like, this is what it looks like for you for the end of the year. This is how much you would have to make up in income or not. If we're fine and the business is generating money still, it's like, do you want to make that money up or do you not want to make that money up? But if you're like, oh shit, I need to make this money, like, then you have an action plan. Okay, I can sell 3 more services. I can do some consulting. I got to get this money in the door. So yeah, we do meet monthly. We look at our projections from 2020 that I just showed you. And she basically is like, okay, here's the actual after all the reconciliation. And we usually meet, like, for January, we'll probably meet mid-February, because like all my credit card statements don't come in until like first week in January. So we usually do it about halfway through February to look back at the full month of January. So yes, I do look at it monthly, but those meetings are only like an hour. I mean, she's a friend of mine, so sometimes they take longer, but usually if like I'm traveling or something, we can get that done in like 45 minutes to an hour. So find yourself a bookkeeper that has a decent hourly rate, and they can, or I can recommend you mine. And yeah, they'll go through it with you. And at first, the first year, it was super emotional for me to go through it. I was like, this is not fun. I don't want to do this. But sort of as I kept doing it every month, and she was like really neutral about the finances. She's like, you didn't hit your numbers. Do you want to try again? Like, how do you want to proceed? And so it just gave me the power and the information to be like, I didn't hit my numbers. Okay, like I can make a plan now. That's a really good question, though. I have like a special guest on the show.
Hey.
These are all great questions. I'm really excited. Thanks for asking them, Rachel. I appreciate it. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at for the cash flow piece of it. Cash flow is really like one of the things I had to get dialed in last year because we had so many like payroll and stuff going out that I needed to make sure that we could pay it. And so it was really important to dial in the payroll last year. So that's why I had to get good at this stuff. Okay, I'm going to jump off. If you do have any questions, you're always welcome to email me. I'm going to drop my email. Hold on, questions, Lauren@laurencaselli.com. You're always welcome to email me. I'm happy to answer any questions. And, if you want my bookkeeper recommendation, please let me know. If you are, interested in taking this further, let me know. I can help you get this set up and we can do some projections as well. Okay. Have a happy Monday. I hope you all have wonderful weeks. And thanks for sticking with me in the sort of messy background situation.